In the cold reaches of space, among the countless stars, humanity had long been underestimated. They were a latecomer to the galactic scene, emerging from the dust of a single blue planet, Terra, unremarkable among the thousands of species who had already laid claim to the stars. The Galactic Council, the governing body of the known universe, saw the Terrans as primitive, brutish, and far too reliant on violence to solve their problems. Little did they know that these very traits would become the stuff of legends. It began with the Kveth War. The Kveth were a species of unparalleled ferocity. They resembled an amalgamation of a predator and a machinist species bred for war. With no sense of mercy or diplomacy, their invasion swept across the outer rim, crushing every civilization in their path. Planets fell, star systems were enslaved, and the Council could only watch in horror as their best forces were overwhelmed. In desperation, they sent out a call for help. They turned to their newest member human internet because they believed the Terrans could stop the Kveth, but because they were running out of options. The humans had shown some talent in combat, nothing extraordinary, but the Council had little to lose by sending them to the front lines. A single Terran fleet arrived in the Thresk system, the current battleground where the Kveth were staging their next assault. Among the galactic military, it was a suicide mission. No one expected the humans to return, but the Terrans didn't see it that way. As the battle commenced, something strange happened. The Kveth were met not with fear, but with an unyielding ferocity that mirrored their own. Human soldiers didn't retreat when faced with overwhelming odds. They adapted. When their ships were outgunned, they maneuvered through asteroid fields with impossible precision, turning the environment into a weapon. When their defenses were breached, they fought in the streets and alleyways with an intensity that stunned even the most hardened alien soldiers. But it wasn't just their tactics, it was their psychology. The Kveth had never faced an opponent who thrived in chaos, who could turn desperation into fuel for victory. Human commanders rewrote the rules of engagement on the fly. They were willing to do what no other species would: sacrifice, endure pain, and push beyond the limits of what should be possible, driven by an almost mythic resilience. The Kveth, for all their strength, couldn't comprehend it. Their strategy was based on breaking the will of their enemies. But humans didn't break. Even in defeat, they regrouped, learned, and came back stronger. Within weeks, the Kveth advance had been halted. Within months, the tide had turned. The final battle took place on the planet Vraxos, the KVETH's staging ground for their galactic campaign. The Kveth had fortified their position, confident that no force could dislodge them. But the Terrans didn't launch a conventional assault. Instead, they unleashed orbital bombardments, drop pods filled with heavily armored shock troops, and tactics so unpredictable that the Kveth command structure collapsed within hours. By the time the dust settled, the Kveth were defeated. The galaxy had been saved, but it was not the Council's advanced species with their mighty armadas that had turned the tide. It was humanity, the species that had been dismissed as too reckless, too violent, too chaotic. The Galactic Council convened to discuss the aftermath of the war, and something became clear to every species present. Humans were not like the others. Where other species viewed war as a tragic necessity, humans seemed to embrace it. They had a talent for destruction, a genius for combat that went beyond simple survival. They weren't just fighters, they were gods of war. But why? What made the Terrans so different? It wasn't just their biology, though their endurance and strength were certainly advantages. It wasn't just their technology, though they were quick to innovate and adapt. It was something deeper, something primal. Humanity had spent millennia fighting against nature, against each other, against the very elements. War, to them, was not just a tool, it was part of their history, their culture, their very identity. In a way, humanity had been forged in the fires of conflict. Every battle, every war, every hardship had sharpened them into something the galaxy had never seen. Other species waged war when they had to. Humans waged war because they knew how. The story spread across the stars. Other species began to speak of the humans in hushed tones, not as equals, but as something more. The phrase gods of war became synonymous with the Terran military, a title they never claimed but never denied. As the years passed, the galaxy changed. Conflicts still arose, but they were never the same. The mere presence of a human fleet could stop a war before it began. Some species sought alliances with the Terrans, hoping to learn their ways. Others steered clear of them, wary of provoking the wrath of the beings who had turned war into an art form. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through diplomacy or trade, but through the one thing they knew better than anyone else, war. And the galaxy would never forget it. The legend of humanity as the gods of war only grew after the HFY War. Word of their feats spread like wildfire through every corner of the galaxy, carried by soldiers, traders, and diplomats alike. Stories of impossible victories, of Terran soldiers who fought on despite being gravely wounded, of commanders who won battles by doing the unthinkable, all became the stuff of myth. The galaxy had seen many warriors, but none like the humans. The Galactic Council, previously dismissive of humanity, now approached them with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Diplomats from every corner of the universe sought audiences with Terran leaders, hoping to secure alliances or, at the very least, assurances that Earth would not turn its formidable military against them. The humans, however, remained humble or perhaps pragmatic. They weren't interested in galactic domination or conquest. They were survivors, forged by necessity, and their focus was on ensuring that they, and those they cared for, would never again face an existential threat like the HFY. Yet, beneath this surface of diplomacy, another reality was taking shape. Humanity had become the galaxy's unofficial peacekeepers, but not in the traditional sense, where once the Galactic Council's fleets were dispatched to mediate disputes. Now it was the threat of human intervention that ended conflicts before they could even begin. For some species, the mere rumor of Terran forces mobilizing was enough to sue for peace. For others, the knowledge that a single human battalion could turn the tide of an entire war acted as a deterrent more potent than any treaty. But with power came fear. Not all species were grateful for humanity's rise. Some resented them. The Zorth Collective, a proud and ancient empire, had been particularly vocal. They viewed humans as a dangerous anomaly, a blight on the cosmic order. The Zorth, known for their rigid discipline and honor-bound traditions, couldn't understand how a species that thrived on chaos and improvisation could be so effective. It was an affront to their worldview. It didn't take long for tension to escalate. The Zorth declared that they would challenge the humans in open combat, a formal, honorable duel between their finest warriors and humanity's elite. They expected a clean, decisive victory, one that would re-establish their dominance in the galactic hierarchy and put these upstart Terrans in their place. The humans accepted, but not with the ceremony or reverence the Zorth expected. For the humans, war wasn't about honor, it was about survival. The duel would take place on the desolate planet of Charon, an uninhabited wasteland of deserts and craters, chosen for its harsh environment to test both sides. When the day came, the Zorth arrived in full regalia, their honor guard pristine in shining armor. Each warrior trained for centuries in the art of combat. They were meticulous, disciplined, and organized, confident in their superiority. The humans, they arrived with a small detachment. No grand display, no pomp, just soldiers in worn combat armor, their eyes sharp and focused. Where the Zorth had spent decades perfecting traditional forms of warfare, the humans brought something else entirely, a tactical ruthlessness and ingenuity that bordered on madness. The duel began. For the first few minutes, it seemed as though the Zorth had the upper hand. Their warriors were unmatched in close combat, moving with precision and lethal grace. But then the humans adapted, as they always did. They used the terrain, the environment, anything they could to turn the battle in their favor. Where the Zorth relied on formations and strict codes of engagement, the humans fought without rules. They set traps, lured Zorth squads into ambushes, and exploited every weakness with a ferocity that left the Zorth commanders stunned. One by one, the Zorth warriors fell, not because they weren't skilled, but because they weren't prepared for the kind of war the humans brought with them. A war where the objective was victory at any cost, where there were no rules and no mercy. By the end of the day, the Zorth had been utterly defeated. Their finest warriors lay scattered across the wastelands of Charon, their centuries of training undone by a species that had honed the art of war in ways they couldn't comprehend. The Zorth had come seeking honor, but they left in shame, their empire humiliated before the entire galaxy. The duel cemented humanity's reputation as the ultimate warriors, but more than that, It served as a reminder to the rest of the galaxy humans were unpredictable, and their greatest strength lay not in their weapons or technology, but in their ability to think beyond the bounds of tradition, to use everything at their disposal, and to do what needed to be done without hesitation. But even as they triumphed, a darker truth began to emerge. The galaxy had grown reliant on human intervention to maintain peace, but this dependence came at a cost. Other species began to stagnate in their military tactics, believing that if a true threat arose, the humans would handle it. Some grew complacent, while others secretly plotted, wary of what the future might hold. If the gods of war ever decided they no longer wanted to be peacekeepers. Then came the Icarian uprising. The Icari were a small, technologically advanced race, known for their peaceful ways and their thriving colonies on the fringes of the galaxy. But beneath their veneer of diplomacy, a faction of radicals had grown tired of what they saw as Terran dominance. They resented the idea that their species, with its rich history of intellectual achievement, should ever have to rely on brute force to maintain its place in the galaxy. In secret, the radicals developed a weapon, a biological agent designed specifically to target humans, crippling their nervous system and rendering their soldiers helpless. The plan was simple: release the agent in key Terran colonies and military installations, paralyzing humanity's forces long enough to stage an uprising that would free the galaxy from their influence. They would show the galaxy that even the gods of war could bleed. But they underestimated humanity once again. The biological attack crippled several Terran outposts, but the response was swift and brutal. Human intelligence networks had already caught wind of the uprising, and within hours of the first attack, Terran forces descended on the Icarian radicals with a vengeance. Entire fleets vanished into the void, never to return. NT